Our first vectors project. In this project, we will practice extracting data, element by element operations, concatenation, and of course, documentation. The first thing that our project file needs, of course, is the Holy Trinity. coc clear close all. Now, we have a protein intake vector that contains data for 28 days or 4 weeks. Let's say that we want to compare week 1 with week 4 and see the percentage difference between these 2 weeks. First, we need to extract these 2 weeks into separate vectors. So, proteins week 1 equal to something and proteins week 4 equals to something. Now, what is that something? The first week is easy. The first week will be simply protein intake from 1 to 7. This is easy. We're taking the first 7 elements from the protein intake vector. But the last week is a bit tricky. And by the way, so are the rest of the weeks that we're going to use. Now, in this vector, we know that we have 28 days and 4 weeks. So we can simply do protein intake from 22 up to 28. But it's going to work, as you can see down here, we have 7 values in both vectors, but this is not flexible. No matter how this vector changes, we are always going to get the first week here, but if we add additional values, we are no longer going to get the last week from this indexing operation. What if you now add a 5th week to the project? Instead of extracting the new last week, you will still be extracting the 4th week. Instead, we will make use of the AND keyword. That gives us the last index. So we can say 22 up to AND. And let's run it. As you can see, it still works. We still get the same values, but we still have a problem, the 22. So how are we going to get the initial index? And that is a good question. We will use the AND keyword again for the same thing, and we will subtract the required amount of days from it. So we always want to take the last week. So we are going to say AND minus 6. And we are going to use brackets because this is an expression that is together. It's still going to work without the brackets, but it's more clear exactly what is going on when we are doing it like this. As I always say, use brackets to remove ambiguity. Now let's run it and we still get the same result. Now, why minus 6? We start from the end and we need to go, since the end by itself will give us one of the days, we need 6 other days. So if we say from end to end, we will get the last day. If we say from end minus 1 until end, we will get the last 2 days. We say minus 1, but we get 2 days. That's why we say minus 6 and not minus 7. If you use minus 7, this will give you the last day of the previous week. So if I say here minus 7, as you can see down here, now we get one extra value. So minus 6. Now let's compare these 2 weeks. We're going to use a simple formula for that. And this formula is value 1 minus value 2 divided by value 2 multiplied by 100. This will give us the percentage difference between the first week and the 7th week. And you can switch between value 1 and value 2 depending on what difference you want to check. If you want to check how much more or less value 1 has compared to value 2, you use value 1 first and subtract and divide it with value 2. If you want to check how much more or less value 2 has compared to value 1, you switch them and subtract and divide value 1 from value 2. Now let's apply this formula to our vectors. Percentage differences equals. Now our first value will be the week 1 protein intake. So we will get proteins week 1 minus proteins week 4. We're going to divide by protein week 4 and we are going to multiply by 100. Let's see if this is going to work, and it's not This is proteins. Let's see if it's working. And it's not really working because we're getting only one single value. Now, what is the problem here? Problem is that we are attempting to divide a vector by another vector, and we are not using the element by element operations. Since we want to get the values for each of the days, we want to compare the first day from week 1 with the first day from week 4. So we have to make the division operation an element by element operation. And if I do it, there we have it. There we have it. So on the first day, we had 15% more protein than on the first day of the 4th week. On the 3rd day, we have the exact same protein intake. As you can see, we have 63 and 63. So the same is true for the last days. So we have another 0 here. So it's working. Now let's extract the other 2 weeks, and instead of comparing the first and the last week, we are going to compare the first 2 weeks versus the last 2 weeks. So protein week 1, week 2 is equal to, what is it equal to? We have the first week already extracted, so proteins week 1. And by the way, I'm going to do an inline concatenation here. So, and by the way, I'm directly concatenating the 2 weeks because I already have my first week here. You can just as easily say protein intake from 1 to 14, but we have to practice. So the next week, the second week, will be protein intake from something to something. Now what are the somethings? From 1 to 7 we get the first week. The second week starts on the 8th index. So we start from 8 and we continue until the 14th day. Now we know that we have 7 days in a week, and we know that we are working on the second week. The second week multiplied by the days in the weeks, 2 times 7 will give us 14. So if we want the second week, the Sunday or the last day of the second week, we have to do 2 times 7, like this. And if we run it, we should get 14 elements in that vector, and we do. There we have it. Protein week 1, week 2, 1 by 14. Now let's do the same thing for week 3 and week 4. Week 3, week 4 equals to something. What is the something? Now the third week is probably the most complex one. Protein intake of something and proteins week 4. Now, what is the something for the third week? Think about it. The second index will be the same as we have here, but it's not going to be 2 times 7, it's going to be 3 times 7. So 3 times 7. That will give us the 21st day or the last day of the third week. But how are we going to get the first day? We know that if we say 2 times 7, we get the last day from the second week. If we say 2 times 7 plus 1, we will get the first day from the week that is after the second week or the first day of the third week. So 2 times 7 plus 1. And we can add another set of brackets, but it's getting too crowded with the brackets, but this is the way to do it. And if we run this now, we get again another 1 by 14 vector. Now, we can extract these weeks out of the concatenation here, so that it's more clear exactly what they do, but I just wanted to show you that you don't have to always extract them into separate vectors. It's a very good practice, you probably should do it all the time, but you don't have to. You can directly, inside the concatenation operation, define exactly what you want to extract from some other vector. So here we can say proteins week 2, proteins week 3, extract, and here we get proteins week 2, and here we get proteins week 3. There we have it. Now we can compare these two new vectors the same way that we did with the first and the fourth week. So percent differences 2, again So protein week 1, week 2 minus protein week 3, week 4 divided by protein week 3, week 4 multiplied by 100. Let's run it. This is a small p. Now let's run it. And there we have it. Again, we get the percentage differences between these two vectors. Now, let's document our code really quickly. So here we have initial data, protein intake for 28 days, 4 weeks. Now here we are extracting data, so extracting weeks into separate vectors and like that. Here we are extracting separate weeks. Here we are combining weeks. And we can add an explanation about the -6 here and the +1s. So we can say +1 or -6 because no +1. Because if we don't have a +1, so no +1 or -7 will place us at the end of the given week. We want to start from the first day of the next +1 or the first day of the current week, which will be the -6. And down here we are calculating the percentage differences, and we can quickly explain the formula here so that other people don't get confused if they see this. So this is to get how much more or less the first value had compared to the second value. If we want to get the opposite, we simply switch to value 2 minus value 1 divided by value 1 multiplied by 100. And this is our final project.